Coming up on Focus, as we wrap up the 2016 election season, political polls continue to make headlines, and we travel to Muhlenberg College in Allentown to find out who makes the polls. Then we turn the focus to history with two local authors. A Penn State Lehigh Valley professor shares the story of women in the presidency with children in her book, Madam President. And in Drinking with the Democrats and Drinking with the Republicans, a Bethlehem writer explores the role of alcohol in presidential politics. Join us to pour over these stories and more right now on Focus. Focus is for our community.
Focus showcases the people,
the places, and the issues that matter to you.
Focus on what matters.
You never know what you're going to see when you tune into Focus.
Support for Focus is provided by Univest, Banking, Insurance, Investments, Fellowship Community, Continuing Care with Spirit, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this special Focus on Campus featuring the 2016 election season. I'm Laura McHugh, joined by reporters Grover Silcox and Brittany Garzillo. Over the past several weeks, we've traveled to the region's colleges and universities to hear from students and faculty about the election. We begin in Allentown with Muhlenberg College. Brittany?
This liberal arts school is known to make headlines with its political polls. So to find out what makes a reliable poll, we turn to the experts who run the Muhlenberg College Institute of Public Opinion. As polls make headlines,
Poll of likely voters puts Clinton 9 points ahead of Trump.
A national poll gives Donald Trump a narrow 2-point lead over Hillary Clinton.
we wanted to learn who makes the polls. So we headed to Muhlenberg College, a liberal arts school located in Allentown, Pennsylvania, that is ranked as a leader in polling.
Would you be willing to help us by answering a few questions?
Public opinion.
We're among the elite of not only academic institutions, but also commercial institutions.
Dr. Chris Borick is a political science professor at Muhlenberg College and director of the college's Institute of Public Opinion.
Yeah, it's just a survey about the election.
It was created in 2001 as a way that the college could do primary research throughout Pennsylvania, the Lehigh Valley, and even the nation on attitudes and perceptions of political issues, social issues, and economic issues.
In August, the Institute received an A rating from 538, a website that provides polling analysis by statistician Nate Silver. The Institute outscored polls including Gallup, the Pew Research Center, CBS News New York Times, NBC News Wall Street Journal, and CNN Opinion Research Corporation.
And that really does fall on our students who spend a lot of time in that small lab down in our library doing the heavy lifting of the Institute.
Tucked beneath the school's Trexler Library, in a lackluster lab labeled Polling Center, students spent hours surveying Lehigh Valley residents.
Hello, my name is Daniel. I'm conducting a research project at Muhlenberg College
about the upcoming election.
We will attempt to call back within the next few days to see if you would be willing to participate. Thank you.
A lot of them are the horse race polls. Who's winning? How much are they winning by? What are the issues? But we're also looking at deeper dives into the voters. For example, the personal aspects of this election.
Have you looked less favorably upon someone you know because of who they're supporting in the presidential election this year? Yes or no?
Students play a primary role in the day-to-day operations of the Institute.
We have about 40 to 50 students on the Institute payroll. They do much of the interviewing, they manage our phone lab, they help with designing the samples. We have a team of supervisors every year that basically run the operations of the Institute.
That team includes senior and neuroscience major Angela Grassi.
When people wonder what that weird room is on sea level of the library, that's us.
Angela started as a caller her freshman year and is currently a co-head supervisor.
I oversee all of the activities of the supervisors and all the callers.
Senior and political science major Michael Juba worked as a caller for the Institute and now helps analyze data as an intern for Dr. Borick.
I'm actually very proud to be doing the work here. It's really interesting. It's almost surreal to think it's right in our library's basement.
So what sets the research apart from the rest?
It's attention to a lot of the detail in the process.
Details in sample selection, neutral questioning, quality interviewing, and transparency, according to Dr. Borick, that have led to a 15-year partnership with the Morning Call and national surveys with the University of Michigan and the Brookings Institution in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, we're here. We work hard. We're interested. We're not calling to ask you for money, so if people are out there and they get calls from us, answer, take 5 minutes, fill out the survey. It really makes a difference.
I think it helps make for an informed society when we know what others are thinking, and I'm very proud of the work that the students at Muhlenberg and the college as a whole has done in helping us do that.
For 15 years, and now 4 presidential elections. For Focus, I'm Brittany Garzillo, reporting.
Thanks, Brittany. While you explored the polls in Allentown, I spent most of the semester at College Hill in Easton, home to Lafayette College, PBS 39's election night production partner. During an election season that's been described as both historic and divisive, students prepared to cast their first votes in a polarized age.
I can tell you just from being on Lafayette College campus that people are really passionate about this election.
This is the next generation of voters, and they have a lot of thoughts about this election that could change the future of American politics.
We're all doing this in the spirit of constructive feedback.
These are the future leaders. These are the people who are going to be forced to solve some of the great issues that are confronting us. And I think it's a nice window into what young people are thinking, and do we have any hope that they're going to be able to confront and have the tools to deal with these massive challenges facing us.
This gives us a whole new venue, a whole new platform to use to teach the students things that we would teach them anyway. But this generates excitement, and that makes it fun for us and makes it more interesting for them.
The election night broadcast is kind of the marquee event of a policy studies education. It is what every policy studies major looks forward to, that they want to bring their best to.
I'm Kat Stevens.
And I'm Frank Aluzzi. I will be one of the 2 co-hosts along with Kat Stevens.
We're working with the other moving parts, working with the results desk, the analyst, to put it all together and make sure that we are prepared for anything that happens on election night.
As the results anchor, I'll be giving live updates on who won which state, so presidential election as well as the Senate and House races.
We have students from, I think, almost every discipline, and we have 7 classes working on it right now for a total of more than 120 students.
What's great about having so many different students work on this is you have so many different perspectives and kind of areas of expertise.
What could happen next? There's like 2 seconds where he's like thinking.
Being a segment producer, it means focusing on an issue. And for us specifically, it means, looking at how that issue affects our local community in here. In my case, that was small businesses. If I could sum it up in one word, it would be uncertainty. Business owners are uncertain about proposed policy changes.
My video segment is focused on big data, so we're looking at how campaigns are using different analytics teams to target voters.
My group and I decided to put together some information on how the increasing ubiquity of social media has helped politicians advance their campaigns. I drew out on a whiteboard some illustrations that would help represent the research.
Almost every single one of my friends is registered to vote as of now, and will be voting in the state of Pennsylvania, as we know, which is a swing state. That's a big deal. There are young people that will be actually making an impact in the upcoming election.
Working on a team is absolutely the biggest thing you get out of this.
When we're trying to put on a broadcast like this, there are a lot of moving parts. At the end of the day, it has to get done. There's no extension, there's no, the election won't wait for us.
The pressure is on a little bit just to make sure that I'm able to give this data and this information accurately and being able to update the people about who won which state.
Just thinking about the concept that I'm going to be announcing potentially historic news. It's getting a little more real every time that I step in front of the cameras and feel the lights, read off the teleprompter. On the House, Senate, and of course.
You hear from students later on say, that was the best experience in my 4 years at Lafayette College, and I couldn't have gotten that anywhere else.
We now turn our attention from the 2016 election to presidential elections of the past and the females who fought to win them. Brittany, you've been covering that story.
Hillary Clinton has already made history by becoming the first woman to be elected as the presidential nominee of a major political party. According to one Penn State Lehigh Valley professor, other women in history have helped pave the way. We joined this professor and author as she shares this message through a children's book.
We have had over 40 presidents of the United States.
In a classroom filled with students at McKinley Elementary School in Allentown, Dr. Nicola Gutgold explains that men have run for president.
But did you know that many girls or women have tried to be president?
And women have too.
Not only don't many adults know about women who've run for presidency, children don't know.
So the Communication Arts and Sciences professor at Penn State Lehigh Valley explored this topic in a children's book titled Madam President, 5 Women Who Paved the Way.
Very often women have been left off the history book pages. So it was very important to me to show children, both boys and girls, that women have sought the U.S. presidency. And just because a person is not ultimately successful or victorious does not mean their effort is not worth it.
Gutgold published her scholarly research in a book titled Paving the Way for Madam President. In the children's book, she features 5 females who have made bids for the United States presidency since the 1960s.
So the research showed that if we could demonstrate to younger women, girls, that women have run for the U.S. presidency, they would be more likely to run for political office themselves.
Released in 2015, the book was co-written by Abigail Kennedy, who is now a senior and English major at Penn State University.
As much as I wanted to pursue leadership when I was a kid, I never believed that I could be president.
It challenges young women, young people in general, to think about those dreams that would very easily be lost if someone didn't say, go for it.
She said, I might not win the presidency, but I would be paving the way for a woman in the future to become president.
Madam President begins with a young Margaret Chase Smith, a former Republican congresswoman from Maine who was the first female to win election to both the United States House of Representatives and the United States Senate. She ran for the Republican nomination in 1964.
Margaret Chase Smith got into politics the way many women did many years ago, and that is the old-fashioned way, over his dead body. Her husband, who was a congressman, died, and she had worked very closely with him, so she was the natural heir apparent.
Illustrations by artist Jane Ramsey paint the picture of past presidential pursuits, including the 1972 election, when Shirley Chisholm, a former congresswoman from New York, ran for the Democratic nomination.
She was a first-generation college graduate. She was raised for a long time by her maternal grandmother in Barbados for her early years.
Chisholm was the first African-American woman elected into the United States Congress in 1968.
She did not run for president to become the president. She ran because she wanted to show she could run for president.
In the book, Gutgold briefly describes each woman from childhood. The first female elected to Congress from Colorado, Pat Schroeder, went on to run for the Democratic nomination in 1988.
She didn't last very long, and when she made a concession speech, she shed a few tears, which reignited the public dialogue about, are women tough enough to be the president?
Women continued to aspire to the Oval Office. In 2000, Harvard Law School graduate Elizabeth Dole ran for president in the Republican primary. Her husband, former United States Senator Bob Dole, won the Republican nomination in 1996.
She was the first female Secretary of Transportation under Ronald Reagan. Then she was the Secretary of Labor with George H.W. Bush, and she was also president of the American Red Cross.
In 2002, she was elected as the first female United States Senator from North Carolina.
Let's talk about Hillary Clinton.
The book concludes with current Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton, who first ran for president in 2008.
I think that if she wins the presidency, we're going to hear a lot about the historical importance of it afterwards. Women may be very motivated to run because they see the success of Hillary Clinton.
Though Dr. Gutgold wouldn't say who she planned to vote for this election, her message in Madam President resonates with anyone who aspires to the highest office in America.
It tells you that you could follow your dreams. Not only boys can be president, boys and girls can be president too.
You can be anything you want to be. And even if you're not successful when you try once, you should try again and again and again.
For Focus, I'm Brittany Garzillo, reporting.
Thank you, Brittany. In our next story, we continue our focus on history with another local author. Grover, tell us more.
That's right, Laura. A Bethlehem-based author has tapped into the subject of alcohol and presidential politics. He's served up some tangy factoids about our chief executives and their preferred libations, and even how alcohol has been used as far back as the Founding Fathers to curry favor with would-be voters. Here's my conversation with author Mark Will Weber. If you want a drink like a president, cozy up to the bar at Hotel Bethlehem. Better yet, get author Mark Will Weber to join you. The author of Mint Juleps with Teddy Roosevelt, Mark literally wrote the book on presidential drinking habits. Together, we pored over the history of alcohol and America's chief executives in the very place Democratic presidential candidate John F. Kennedy spent the night while on the campaign trail in 1960.
The Kennedy clan, for lack of a better term, aristocratic drinks that they would serve in Cape Cod.
According to Mark, Kennedy wasn't a big drinker. He liked Heineken, considered an elite German beer in his day, but one of his favorite libations was a Cuban daiquiri, which you can still order today at the Hotel Bethlehem.
And here we are, the Cuban daiquiri.
Mark has re-released his original book into two parts, Drinking with the Democrats and Drinking with the Republicans, just in time for the 2016 election.
I think in some ways the subject chose me.
Mark regaled me with the story of Republican President Warren G. Harding stuffing a fifth of whiskey into his golf bag.
During Prohibition, nobody's supposed to drink, and here's Harding, who sometimes by the back nine, he would be shooting all over the place.
Harding's story piqued Mark's interest, and the Bethlehem-based author began exploring the history of presidential drinking and how alcohol was often used to win votes.
It predates America in that we know that when George Washington ran for the House of Burgesses, when we were still a British colony, that he very liberally supplied alcohol to his would-be voters and got elected.
America's ninth president, William Henry Harrison, a member of the Whig Party, campaigned for the presidency in the 1840s as the log cabin and hard cider candidate.
His supporters would go to the polls and construct these little log cabins and drink hard cider while they waited to vote.
Mark believes that alcohol still plays a role in presidential elections.
It's still there today, but it's a little more subtle. Instead we have $10,000 plate dinners with top shelf wines from California or Europe.
But what about presidential preferences? In the title of his book, the author highlights Republican Teddy Roosevelt's penchant for mint juleps.
He would serve mint juleps to people that would play tennis with him. And he loved to play tennis, so he had a court right at the White House, and he also had a bed of fresh mint at the White House. And he would instruct his steward to make these great mint juleps with the fresh mint.
Teddy's cousin Franklin, a Democrat, enjoyed martinis. But when Winston Churchill, the British Prime Minister, came calling, it meant more than the usual drinking and staying up late for the president and his guest.
When Churchill came to the White House, not only did they have to have large amounts of alcohol, it had to be the right alcohol, it had to be a specific Napoleon brandy that he drank or a special champagne. And Eleanor Roosevelt did not actually enjoy it when Churchill visited because she kept her husband up in late hours and they drank more than they should.
Although President Roosevelt never stayed in the Hotel Bethlehem, Churchill did. In addition to JFK, Presidents Clinton, Ford, and Eisenhower stayed here. According to Mark, Eisenhower, a Republican, was a moderate drinker but enjoyed a scotch or two later in life.
His doctor tried to limit him to one nightcap of scotch, and Ike would agree, and then he'd drink the one scotch and he'd turn to the butler and ask for a second one, and his doctor would say, "But Mr. President, we talked about this, we're gonna only have one." And he said, "Thank you, Howard, you've done your duty." Turn to the butler, "Bring me a scotch, please."
And in the 21st century, the rising popularity of craft beer hasn't escaped the presidency. Democratic President Obama asked his staff to homebrew some beer for the White House, and they came up with White House Honey Ale, Porter, and Blonde. It served to special guests of the Executive Mansion. So the question now is, what kind of libations will the next president prefer?
The one candidate doesn't drink at all, so we'll see what happens on that score.
And on that note, a toast to the next Commander-in-Chief, to the new president. May he or she govern well. For Focus, I'm Grover Silcox reporting.
Thank you, Grover. I understand you've prepared some trivia for us.
Yes, well, you know, having sat there with Mark and, you know, getting these factoids, these interesting things that you probably won't be learning in your college history class or your high school history class, but that's what makes them all the more interesting. So how about Abraham Lincoln? You know, was he a big drinker?
I would think no.
No?
You are correct. You are correct. He was not a big drinker. In fact, he used to drink, according to Mark, small beer, what they called small beer. In fact, they used to serve it to children. And he was
Is that like a root beer or a ginger ale?
I think it was an alcoholic beverage.
Oh, it was alcoholic.
But very like the O'Douls of the 1800s, you know, but with maybe a little more of a kick. But he was such a non-drinker that he actually teased his cabinet. And he would order wine, and the cabinet members would be, you know, very excited. Whoa, Lincoln's going to be drinking. And Lincoln would reach for the wine and put it up to his lips, look around, laugh, and put it back down again. Like, I got you. So, of course, my namesake, Grover Cleveland, known as Big Steve.
That's right.
So his real first name was Stephen, but preferred Grover. Unlike myself, I'm an actual Grover.
Would have maybe preferred Stephen.
Yeah, I would have preferred Steve. My grandfather was born during the Cleveland administration. Yes. And so I can only be grateful that he wasn't born during the Rutherford B. Hayes administration. I would be Rutherford right now. So, and now going on to other factoids. First president who was a U.S. citizen when he became president. The first U.S. citizen to become president.
Gosh, maybe no. Madison wouldn't have been, would he?
No, he was born before the country was formed. Actually,
who is it?
Should I tell you?
Yes. You should tell us.
Why wouldn't you guess this? Martin Van Buren. Come on. He was born, I think, in 1784, shortly, you know, after the Declaration of Independence, which I guess is considered the beginning of the country, you know, of the United States.
How interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First left-handed president?
Abraham Lincoln?
Nope.
Before that?
Afterwards.
After?
Yes.
This
is it
James
Is it
Garfield.
too far back?
Well, and you only asked that because you're left-handed.
That is correct. All the great presidents were left-handed, except for Lincoln, and he was faking it. But no.
Well, we are right-handed
Yes.
people, so we wouldn't pay attention to
Well,
that.
actually, Garfield was, I guess you would call it bidextrous. He could write with his left and his right. He could write in Latin and Greek simultaneously. So, unfortunately, he was assassinated, and he probably was a genius and would have made a great president if he had, you know, been able to fulfill his full term. First president to fly in an airplane as president.
Oh. So that would be much more recent.
So maybe FDR?
Yes,
Hey!
very good. He actually flew to a war conference with Churchill in Casablanca, in North Africa. I believe that was 1943 or 44.
Well, these factoids are fantastic, and for our viewers at home who might want to test their own presidential knowledge, they can check out the latest edition of PBS 39 Matters, where you've created a crossword puzzle featuring factoids like this and many more.
That's right. If you were paying attention, actually some of the questions are in there. So, and of course, I provided the answers.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you, Grover. Thank you, Brittany, and thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week. Until then, remember to focus on what matters.